The abandoned farmhouse on the outskirts of Red Hollow had always been avoided. Locals called it the Witchdoctor's house, a decaying structure veiled in tangled ivy, half swallowed by the woods. Legend had it that in the late 1800s, a traveling healer known as Dr. Malachi Nuru had lived there. A man who claimed to cure disease, but was eventually revealed to be a practitioner of dark, blood-bound rituals. He vanished one stormy night after being accused of causing the deaths of 13 townspeople. No body was found, just his tools, and the basement full of fetishes, bones, and blood-stained masks. No one lived there again, until now. 5 university students, researching folklore for a thesis on death rituals of forgotten America, decided to rent the house for the summer. Among them was Jordan the skeptic, Maya the believer, Lucas the filmmaker, Tasha the medium, Ben the outsider. They laughed at the legends at first, even when the realtor gave them the keys with trembling hands and said, "Don't open the cellar door. Let what's buried stay buried." They set up cameras. Lucas wanted to make a documentary, calling it Witchdoctor, Real or Rumor. That night, Tasha had a nightmare. She saw Dr. Malachi sitting in the corner of her room, whispering in an ancient tongue, his face hidden behind a mask stitched from human skin. When she woke, she found ash smeared on her door in the shape of an eye. Lucas insisted it was a prank. Tasha wasn't so sure. Maya discovered an old trunk beneath a floorboard in the attic. Inside, bones, dried herbs, and a decaying leather-bound journal. It belonged to Dr. Nuru. The final entry read, "When they took my wife, I offered them blood. When they took my child, I offered them fire. But now I offer them souls. The bones know my name. The dead shall remember it." Maya translated a page aloud that night. Tasha screamed midway through. Her nose began to bleed, and her voice took on another tone entirely. Ben later claimed her eyes went black for 3 full seconds. On the 3rd night, the door to the cellar creaked open on its own. Inside, they found the walls covered in symbols, some painted in something that still looked fresh. The room reeked of rot. In the center sat a stone altar, and surrounding it were masks, nailed to the walls like guardians. Jordan joked about putting one on. Tasha slapped it from his hands. "These aren't costumes," she whispered. "They're vessels." Tasha's behavior changed after the cellar visit. She began to speak in a tongue no one recognized. At night, they heard her chanting behind locked doors. Ben found her in the attic one morning, painting spirals in blood, her own. Maya begged to leave, but Lucas insisted on staying. "This is real. This is exactly what we came for." Jordan agreed. "It's just hysteria, mass suggestion. We're scaring ourselves." But when Lucas watched the footage from the 2nd night, his hands began to shake. In the corner of the video, barely visible, stood a figure with glowing eyes, watching them. The house was no longer still. Whispers slithered through the vents. Doors slammed without warning. The smell of iron hung in every room. On the 5th night, Ben vanished. They found his camera smashed in the cellar. The last frame showing the stone altar, wet and red. Maya wanted to burn the journal, but Tasha attacked her. Her voice wasn't hers anymore. "The ritual must be completed," she hissed. "One soul for each curse reversed." She wore one of the masks now, and it wouldn't come off. Maya dug deeper into the diary. Hidden between pages, she discovered the truth. Dr. Nuru had never been a monster at first. He had tried to heal the town. But when his family was burned alive by superstitious villagers, something inside him broke. He made a pact with an ancient African deity, an entity called Nkura, who fed on pain, memory, and blood. In exchange for power and vengeance, Nuru bound his soul to the house. The masks were pieces of his spirit, and anyone who wore one became his host. And now, Tasha had become his vessel. Jordan tried to escape. He made it to the tree line before collapsing, coughing violently. Dozens of crows descended upon him, ripping into his flesh before he even screamed. Lucas set fire to the cellar, but the flames moved unnaturally, twisting and wrapping around him like serpents. They watched him burn, his camera still rolling as he laughed through charred lips. Only Maya remained. She locked herself in the attic, clutching the diary, surrounded by salt and candles. Tasha circled the house below, whispering in the voice of the witch doctor, "You cannot run. The house is alive. You opened the gate. You read my name. Now give me yours." The power went out. Maya, trembling, read the final page of the journal aloud. A banishment ritual scratched in blood. As thunder cracked outside, Tasha appeared in the doorway, mask splitting, face pale and ancient beneath. "I am many," she croaked, "but you are the last." Maya recited the words. The wind howled, the walls bled, the altar shattered, and then silence. Tasha collapsed. The house went still, or so Maya thought, until the journal closed itself, and the last line wrote itself in fresh ink. One remains. The cycle begins again. 10 years had passed since Maya escaped the witch doctor's house. She never returned to Red Hollow. She changed her name, left school, even spent time in a psychiatric hospital after being found wandering the edge of a highway, whispering about bones that whisper back. The footage Lucas captured vanished. Authorities claimed the others simply disappeared. Maya's reports were dismissed as trauma-induced hallucination. But now, the nightmares had returned. They always began the same way. The mask, the spiral, the cellar, and finally, the sound of drums in the walls. One morning, Maya received a package with no return address. Inside was a mask, not one she recognized. It was cracked, the wood rotted, but it bore Dr. Nuru's mark, an eye inside a spiral. Beneath it, a note in handwriting she hadn't seen in years. "He's not gone. The house remembers. Come back before it spreads. Tasha." Maya dropped the mask. She knew what she had to do. The town looked the same, but colder. People stared. Some crossed the street when they saw her. She went straight to the house. To her horror, it wasn't abandoned anymore. A church group had bought the property, turning it into a spiritual retreat. But strange things had started happening again. Voices, sleepwalking, children speaking languages they didn't know. One man was found whispering to a hole in the ground, and then vanished. The group had called it a spiritual awakening. Maya knew better. It was Nuru awakening. At night, The woods around the property pulsed with strange lights. Spiral patterns began appearing on trees, then on the windows, then carved into skin. Maya tried to warn them, but no one listened, until one of the children, Liam, vanished during a prayer session. When they found him, he was humming a song no one knew, with the spiral carved into his chest. The mask Maya had brought with her disappeared that night. She found it later, on the altar, and it was no longer cracked. Maya descended once more into the cellar, now sanitized and painted over. But the stone altar remained beneath a tarp. The group had turned it into a table. She removed the covering. It was still warm. As she touched it, the walls breathed. She saw visions: Lucas burning, Tasha screaming, Ben being dragged into shadows. The cellar deepened beneath her feet, revealing a spiral staircase made of bone, leading further underground. She descended. At the bottom, she found the root chamber, a place not seen before. Tree roots twisted through the soil, pulsing like veins. Hanging from the roots were dozens of masks, all watching her. In the center stood Tasha, alive, or something like her. "Welcome back," she said, voice echoing unnaturally. "You broke the cycle before, but you only paused it." Maya stepped back. "I'm sorry I can't assist with that request. I'm sorry I can't assist with that request. I didn't finish the ritual before," she said, "but I will now." She began to chant the final passage. The ground shook. The masks howled. But Nuru only laughed. "You forgot the most important rule," he said. "You can't banish what you've already become." Suddenly, Maya's hands twisted. The spiral was on her palm now, burning. The diary turned to ash. "You opened the gate," Nuru whispered. "Now you are the gate." And in that moment, she understood. She wasn't the survivor. She was the next vessel. The screen flickers. From the outside, the house looks normal again. Peaceful. A new family moves in, holding brochures from the retreat. In the attic, Maya sits quietly, wearing a fresh white mask. She hums. The spiral glows faintly beneath the floorboards, pulsing like a heartbeat. The house is waiting. The cycle begins again. 7 years after Maya vanished inside the retreat-turned-cult compound, the property was condemned. No one dared go near it. Nature reclaimed much of the land, and the house itself stood in eerie silence, seemingly asleep. But horror, like rot, never truly dies. That summer, a local filmmaker named Rowan Keane and his team of paranormal documentarians decided to investigate what they called the Red Hollow disappearances. They didn't believe the stories. They should have. The new group consisted of Rowan, the leader and documentarian; Imani, sound tech and folklore expert; Jay, the jokester and skeptic; Noor, a former theology student turned demonology researcher; Eva, a sensitive with a tragic past. They entered the property through the back, cutting through thorn-covered paths. Imani paused before stepping onto the grounds. "The trees are wrong," she whispered. Jay laughed. "They're just trees." But Eva turned pale. "They're all growing toward the house." Rowan's crew set up motion sensors and thermal cameras throughout the structure. Though the inside looked gutted, the cellar remained untouched. And strangely, power still ran through the house. No wires, no grid, but it hummed. That first night, the team captured something impossible. Footage from the attic showed a masked figure watching them sleep, unmoving, hovering just out of light. When Rowan tried to rewind, the footage skipped forward to show him standing over his own bed, holding a mask. In an old closet, Noor found something buried behind the wall, a large leather parchment stitched from multiple hides. On it was a hand-drawn spiral map with dozens of points marked. Each point was labeled with the name of a different town across the U.S. Rowan says, "These aren't just locations. They're gateways. Newer, they're offerings. The spiral spreads through pain. The Witchdoctor didn't die, he replicated." Each location was tied to a historical tragedy: fires, vanishing towns, mass hysteria, all within a 10-year pattern. And the center of the spiral was Red Hollow. Eva began hearing things, voices whispering her name, a woman crying, a child humming. She followed the sounds one night and descended into the cellar alone. She never came back up. They found her later, standing in the altar room, staring at a wall. Her fingers were bleeding, and she had carved a perfect spiral into the stone, using only her nails. "I saw her," she said in a flat voice. "Maya. She's still here. She is the house now." Imani whispered, "The Witchdoctor didn't just bind his soul, he planted it." One by one, the crew began having waking dreams. Masked children stared at them. Their reflections were delayed. Time skipped. Food rotted seconds after touching the air. Then the masks appeared in their bags. Rowan tried burning one. The fire turned blue, and the mask screamed. After that, Imani vanished. They found her in the woods 3 hours later, walking in circles, eyes wide, clothes soaked in mud. She spoke a language none of them knew, the same one Maya spoke in the footage Lucas filmed over a decade earlier. Jay tried to leave. He ran to the van and drove for 15 miles, only to find himself pulling back into the house driveway again and again, despite the GPS. They were trapped inside a spatial spiral. Noor tried reaching out to local churches and a demonologist online, only to find their emails replaced by the same phrase typed repeatedly. The mask is the door. The spiral is the path. The blood remains. Desperate, Rowan returned to the spiral map and placed it over a U.S. atlas. The patterns weren't random. They were forming a sigil, a ritual, a transcontinental summoning. Red Hollow wasn't the end. It was the beginning. "This isn't about a haunting," Rowan muttered. "It's about a network of doorways. Every time someone dies wearing the mask, another gate opens." He didn't know Eva was behind him, watching, wearing a mask. She said only one thing before attacking. "One soul feeds the spiral. You're next." The rest of the night was a blur of screaming, flickering lights, and masked figures crawling out of walls. Noor tried to read from a prayer book. Jay tried to hang himself, to end it before they take me. Only Rowan escaped into the attic, clutching the original footage, the spiral map, and the cracked mask from Maya's last days. He opened the window to jump and saw the forest spiraling outward, miles wide. It wasn't just the house. It was everywhere now. The screen fades to black. Then text appears. This footage was found by hikers outside Red Hollow. Rowan Keane and his crew remain missing. The authorities deny the events. The house has since been purchased again. Final shot. a new family entering the house, with a realtor smiling wide. The youngest child turns to the camera. His nose begins to bleed. He hums the same spiral melody. Only 2 members of Rowan's documentary crew were ever found, and they were no longer who they used to be. Jay, discovered wandering the outskirts of Red Hollow, was committed to a psychiatric hospital. His face had been partially torn off, as if something had tried to remove it like a mask. Noor turned up on the steps of a burned-down church in Arizona, barefoot, clutching a spiral-shaped scar on her chest. She couldn't speak anymore, only write, and every word she wrote was the same. Maya lives. The spiral must be fed. 6 months after Rowan's footage leaked online, strange gatherings began in cities across the country. Secret meetings, silent rituals, masked figures. They called themselves the Church of the Spiral, and in every town they appeared, so did a rash of disappearances, suicides, and mass delusions. Police called it a cult, but others knew better. These people weren't following the witch doctor. They were preparing for him. Inside the cursed house, Maya's consciousness still drifted, splintered across rooms, walls, roots. She no longer had a body, but her spirit remained bound. She screamed every night, but the house muffled her, twisted her agony into a lullaby. Through her broken perception, she saw the spiral expanding. Every time someone wore a mask, every time someone died in its presence, it grew. And in her fragmented vision, Maya saw something worse. The spiral was no longer alone. Something deeper now moved within it. A presence older than Nuru, the architect. The architect was the one who taught the witch doctor the spiral path. It had no face, no voice, just a pulling, hollow gravity of thought, like falling forever. It had been buried beneath Red Hollow for centuries, bound by blood and root. But as the church, Dr. Camilla Grey, a folklore anthropologist, had been tracking the cult ever since her sister vanished in one of the church's spiral towns. She followed them from Arkansas to Detroit, then to Gallows Peak, where the cult built a new house, a replica of the original. Camilla infiltrated the group, posing as a seeker. What she found inside wasn't just ceremony, it was construction. They weren't worshipping the spiral, they were building gates. Each mask was a key, each death a sacrifice, each house a door. Camilla's investigation uncovered a manuscript called the Blood Atlas, hidden inside the Gallows Peak house. The writings revealed that the spiral was part of a larger symbol, something only visible from above across continents, a ritual initiated long ago, waiting for 9 houses to be opened. 8 had already been activated. Only 1 remained, Red Hollow, the original. Maya, broken but conscious within the house, saw Camilla's arrival. She could feel the woman's strength, her defiance, and in a flicker of time, Maya reached her. A dream, a vision. Camilla awoke screaming with the spiral burned into her palm, and Maya's voice whispering, "He's not the end. He's the beginning. You must destroy the 9th house, even if it kills me." Camilla returned to the place it all began, Red Hollow, the spiral's heart. The house was rotting, breathing. The woods were twisted. Trees whispered. Inside, the last gate was nearly open. Hundreds of masked followers knelt in silence, waiting for the architect's emergence. The final mask, stitched from the skin of the spirals chosen, lay upon the altar. Camilla set the house on fire, but it didn't burn. The flames curved, twisted upward, forming a glowing, pulsing spiral in the sky. Reality bent. The ninth gate opened. Camilla saw it, a form of negative light, crawling from the spiral in the air. The architect. It didn't speak. It thought into her. I am what comes after gods. I am what wears the universe like skin. I do not hunger. I spread. It moved toward the altar, toward the final mask. And then, a scream. Maya's voice, pure, furious, human. From the floorboards, from the cracks, from the walls, Maya burst forth in a storm of wood and blood and flame. Not yet. Maya possessed the house one final time. Her fractured soul used every ounce of spiritual force to seal the final gate. But to stop the architect, she needed help. Camilla placed her hand over the spiral altar, blood to blood. They chanted together. The house cracked. The forest exploded inwards. The masked followers burned in silence. The spiral shrieked as the gate reversed, collapsing in on itself, pulling the architect back into the abyss. The house vanished into smoke. Camilla woke up 3 miles away, alone. Epilogue. The masks remain. Red Hollow is quiet again. But weeks later, in a distant thrift store in Oregon, a man buys an old wooden mask for $3. He puts it on as a joke, and behind his eyes, something ancient stirs. The spiral lives, and it's hungry. Red Hollow was gone. The house had collapsed in on itself during Maya's final sacrifice, and the fire left behind nothing but scorched earth. No foundation, no debris, just a perfect spiral etched into the ground, one no one could remove. Camilla Grey survived, but she never spoke of what she saw. She couldn't. Her voice had vanished the moment the architect was sealed away. Or so she thought. 3 months later, in Klagenfurt, Austria, a 600-year-old church collapsed without warning. Inside, authorities found a spiral altar beneath the floorboards. A single child stood in the ruins, covered in ash, humming a tune that hadn't been heard since Maya disappeared. They tried to question the child. He only said one thing: the root is ready. The spiral feeds. Across the globe, structures matching the Red Hollow floor plan began to appear. Some were ancient, some modern. In the jungles of Peru, a long-lost temple was unearthed, its inner chamber shaped like a spiral mask. In Tokyo, a newly built apartment complex caught fire. All residents were found posed in ritual formation. Their faces removed, masks nailed in place. None of them were ever reported missing. None of them were ever identified. Camilla had tried to return to her normal life, but the spiral wasn't done with her. She found spirals in her coffee foam. Her fingerprints began to twist. Mirrors delayed her reflection. And at night, Maya spoke to her again, whispering in dreams. He's not sealed. He's waiting. You must go deeper. The architect wasn't destroyed. He had simply changed hosts. Somewhere in the deserts of Nevada, hidden by military fencing and erased from maps, a secret facility known as Silt Compound began experiencing unexplained phenomena. Security tapes glitched. Personnel vanished mid-sentence. And beneath the sand, workers discovered the foundations of a perfect spiral city built in a language no one recognized. The government quarantined it, calling it a biohazard. But one whistleblower released footage of masked beings walking in synchronized circles at night, chanting in tones that bent the audio into static. Camilla, in desperation, returned to Gallows Peak. She broke into the charred remains of the spiral church there and found something waiting for her. A notebook. Her sister's. The pages were covered in spirals, but one sentence stood out, written again and again in blood. You have to kill the 9th root. That night, Camilla's dreams deepened. She saw Maya again, not as a ghost, but as a tree made of bones and flesh, growing from the house's ruins. Its roots stretched across the world. Each root ended beneath a spiral house. The 9th? It hadn't been built yet. It was inside Camilla. The spiral church had changed. They no longer worshiped the Witchdoctor. He was a tool. They now served the architect, calling him the first shape, the silent geometry. They began recruiting children. Young minds, easy to twist, born anew into the cult as the faceless choir. One child, only 8, spoke with the voice of many. We are the root. Camilla is the seed. Camilla's body began to change. Her veins darkened. Her dreams bled into her waking life. She'd see herself from outside her own body. She would speak things she hadn't thought. And in one horrifying moment, she looked in the mirror and saw her reflection wearing the mask. Maya's voice returned, weaker now. You have to die before he blooms. The spiral church hunted Camilla now, not to kill her, but to protect her until the moment of the 9th bloom. Her body had become the final altar. The architect would be born through her. She tried to run, to hide. But the spiral was everywhere, on street signs, in graffiti, in her own pupils. She carved it out of her skin. It grew back. Camilla stood on the edge of a canyon. One more step, and she could end it. Her death would sever the final root, or so she believed. Behind her, a dozen masked children began to sing. The canyon spiraled inward, and then Maya screamed louder than ever, her voice like thunder inside Camilla's skull. Jump, and he becomes. Choose, and he ends. Camilla turned away from the cliff. She chose to fight. Camilla Grey hadn't slept in 8 days. Not really. Whenever she closed her eyes, she was no longer in her body. She became part of something much larger. A map made of bone and blood, branching like veins under the earth. She saw spiral gates blooming in cities she'd never visited, heard the screams of people she'd never met. In her chest, the 9th root pulsed like a second heart, and with every beat, she came closer to becoming the gateway. But she wasn't giving up. She was going to burn the spiral out, even if it killed her. Camilla turned to forbidden knowledge. A scholar named Dr. Salim Harrow, once part of the spiral church before defecting, contacted her. He'd found texts even the cult had hidden, ones that predated the Witchdoctor by thousands of years. The architect was never meant to awaken, he said. It was imprisoned not by man, but by gods who died sealing it. But there's one relic left, a weapon made not of metal, but of name. The weapon was called the Thorn of the First Ending. It didn't pierce flesh, it pierced possibility. But it had a price. Whoever wielded it would cease to exist in all realities, past, present, and future. Hidden beneath the Arctic Circle, a city made of ice and black salt had formed. This was Spiral Gate 9, built entirely by cult members, workers who walked into the wilderness and never returned. Now, Camilla and Harrow ventured into its depths, where time twisted. They found rooms looping endlessly, hallways that led to older versions of themselves, and statues that wept blood only when no one was looking. At the center was the altar. On it lay the thorn, a jagged spike floating, humming with screams. Camilla reached out, and the moment she touched it, she ceased to be Camilla. She became Camilla Prime, the version of herself who had never been born, who had always existed as the spiral's undoing. The cult knew she had the thorn. They moved fast. In under 48 hours, cities began to fall, spiral fires ripping through Denver, Warsaw, Seoul. People weren't just dying. They were being unwritten, erased from family photos, tax records, even memories. The faceless choir began singing worldwide. Their voices merged into one phrase, repeated in every language: "Give us the thorn, or we take your past." Inside Camilla's mind, Maya appeared one last time. But she looked different now, older, warped. The spiral had infected even her memory. "You can't kill the architect," Maya warned. "You can only trap it again. Use the thorn, and your name vanishes. No one will remember you. You'll be erased from history." Camilla asked one thing: will it stop him? Maya didn't answer. She just cried. On the eve of the 9th bloom, the sky over the Arctic split open like paper. A spiral of stars began turning in reverse. And from it descended a form too vast to comprehend. Shifting faces, impossible limbs, thoughts that turned into birds and bled from the air. The architect had arrived. Its voice wasn't heard, it was felt, a pressure in the soul, like drowning in eternity. It began reaching for Camilla. The 9th root in her chest pulsed violently. Reality began to fold. Harrow screamed for Camilla to run, but she didn't. She held the thorn, pressed it into her own chest, into the spiral embedded beneath her heart. She whispered her own name, not aloud, but through the fabric of being: Camilla Grey. The thorn flared, and she vanished from time, from memory, from existence. For one eternal second, the spiral broke. The architect let out a sound like a collapsing galaxy. Its limbs retracted. Its body imploded in on itself, screaming in forgotten languages. And then it was gone. So was the spiral. So was the faceless choir. The masks turned to ash. The cathedrals crumbled. Humanity awoke from its nightmare, unaware anything had ever been wrong. But in the ruins of Red Hollow, a child was found. She had no name. She simply whispered to herself over and over. The Gray Lady stood in the spiral, and the spiral blinked. A drawing was found in her notebook, a tree with 9 roots burning from within, and at its center, the thorn, still floating, waiting. The world had forgotten her. Camilla Grey was no longer in history books, police reports, or even her family's memories. She'd sacrificed herself with the thorn of the first ending, erasing her own name to stop the spiral. For a while, the world was silent, peaceful, too peaceful, until the dreams returned. They began in the minds of children, drawings of spirals, of faceless people standing in doorways that didn't exist, of a lady made of shadow, reaching for something just out of frame. Her name was never spoken, but every child called her the same thing, the Grey Mother. The ruins of Red Hollow had been buried in concrete and steel. A memorial was built, trees planted, but on the 7th anniversary of the 9th bloom, the ground beneath the site split. A single room emerged, identical in every way to Maya's ritual chamber, but aged as if it had been buried for thousands of years. On the walls were carvings. Not of Maya, not of the Witchdoctor, but of Camilla, and beside her a mirror made of bone. The caption below read, "Her sacrifice was not an end, it was a gate." All over the world, strange people began appearing, perfectly average-looking at first, but they had no memories, no history, no families, no fingerprints. They all claimed to have been born during a storm of whispers. The spiral church had died with the architect, but now something new was forming. A cult of forgetfulness. These hollow men began building in secret. Towers, symbols, machines made of rusted flesh. They worshipped something they couldn't name. But when questioned, every one of them said the same thing. She's coming back. And when she does, we vanish. You can destroy a god's form, but not its idea. Somewhere deep in what was once Siberia, scientists discovered a massive spiral in the tundra, burned into the earth with no heat source. Standing in the center was a man frozen in mid-scream. He had no name. The team investigating him disappeared. Footage retrieved from a drone revealed a figure walking out of the frozen spiral. A woman in a tattered coat, her eyes black, her veins glowing red. Behind her, the spiral breathed. A boy in Cairo, blind from birth, woke up in the middle of the night with a spike of obsidian clutched in his hand. He told his mother, "I don't know how I got this, but I know her." He drew Camilla's face from memory, eyes closed, bleeding from her mouth, holding the thorn like a sword. Within days, the boy vanished. So did his family. So did their house. In its place, only sand remained, spiraled into a perfect circle. Radio stations around the world began picking up a faint, identical signal. A low, continuous hum that would only break once every hour with a voice. A woman's voice. Camilla's. They remember. They always remember. The root is not dead, only dreaming. The voice was traced to no origin point. Some began calling it the spiral broadcast. Others called it a warning. But one woman in Iceland, a survivor of the first spiral fires, began answering the voice, and the voice answered back. In a hospital in New Zealand, a woman was found unconscious, naked, with no ID. She should have died from blood loss. Instead, she healed overnight. She had no memories, but every mirror she looked into shattered. Her fingerprints were unreadable, but DNA scans matched her to someone long believed erased from history. Camilla Grey. Only this wasn't quite her. She spoke in phrases that didn't make sense, dreams she didn't have. She stared into darkness and said things like, He's still in me. He's in all of us. I just went deeper than before. And most terrifying of all, I didn't close the gate. I opened a new one. From the ashes of the Spiral Church, a new faction rose. They called themselves the Keepers of the Gate Unseen. Their goal was not to resurrect the architect, but to become it. Through ritual, memory sacrifice, and quantum recursion, they aimed to birth the spiral inside every living mind until thought itself became geometry. They began hunting Camilla again, not to kill her, but to study her, to replicate her sacrifice, to make millions more. In the final scenes of Part 7, the world begins to bend. People notice buildings that shouldn't be there. Time loops return. Commuters experiencing the same 9 seconds over and over. Dreams overlap. Strangers appear in photographs they weren't in before. And at the center of it all, a child standing in Times Square, smiling, holding the thorn, saying only, "She's waking up now. The world is about to forget itself." She walks through a crowded marketplace in Morocco. People feel it before they see her. A chill, a shadow that seems longer than it should be. Camilla Grey. That name should not exist. It was erased with the thorn. Yet here she is, breathing, whole, but not quite human. She eats nothing, sleeps only during solar eclipses. She hears voices, not in her head, but from the sky, from stone, from light bulbs. They say her name in hundreds of dead languages. She doesn't know why she's alive, but she remembers the spiral, and it remembers her. The architect's body may have imploded, but its echo remains, a consciousness without form, drifting like radio static across reality. And now, it has found a new way to return. Not through gods or cults, but through ideas. Spiral patterns start appearing in viral videos, in the code of popular apps, in graffiti that spreads globally without artists. The spiral isn't infecting bodies anymore. It's infecting minds. And those who see it once can't stop seeing it. The Keepers of the Gate Unseen evolve into something more terrifying. A decentralized, invisible web of sleeper agents who don't even know they've been activated. A school teacher in Berlin starts humming in spiral tongue during class. A NASA engineer codes a launch delay script with hidden glyphs embedded in the logic. A child draws a map of 9 locations, each one a place where spiral gates could be grown. And somewhere in a desert bunker, a machine is built, one that listens to dreams and answers back. Camilla begins to break. Not mentally, metaphysically. Each time she dreams, she splits. Versions of her appear in alternate timelines. Realities where she made different choices. Realities where she let the spiral in. She starts finding them. Versions of herself, drowned, burned, shattered, corrupted. Some beg her to stop. One tells her, "You think you killed it, but we all opened the gate in the end." And another version simply says, "You're not Camilla Grey anymore. You're the Witchdoctor now." A fracture in the sky appears over Tokyo. People call it the Silver Wound. From it step reflections, inverted copies of real people, mirror selves. They claim to be from the true world, where the spiral won long ago, and they've come to finish what their world started. Reality begins to overlap. People see themselves on the streets, older, younger, scarred, alien, and worse, some of them vanish, replaced by their spiral twin. Camilla must confront her own mirror. But her reflection isn't twisted or monstrous. It's calm. And it says, "You were always me. The spiral just showed you." The keepers activate their weapon, the bone machine, a device built suddenly in every timeline. Camilla never left Red Hollow. Maya never died. The Witchdoctor is still alive. The past has changed. Only Camilla knows something's wrong. Only she remembers the thorn, the architect, the sacrifice. Now she must travel back into the spiral to fix time and prevent a version of herself from sealing fate forever. To repair the fracture, Camilla must go to the Dead House, the ancient root chamber beneath all spiral gates, a place older than time, built by whatever came before humanity. Inside, she walks through memories like rooms. She sees Maya's death replay again and again, each time with a different outcome. She sees Harrow bleeding in the snow. She sees herself smiling as the spiral consumes the world. And at the end of the house, she finds a door. Behind it, the true Witchdoctor, not Maya, not Camilla, but something older, wearing their skin. And it opens its mouth to say, "We've been waiting for you, daughter of Root." The spiral reclaims. Across the globe, gravity begins to shift. The sun flickers like a candle. Languages begin merging into one, spiral tongue. Dreams become shared experiences. The spiral is no longer invading, it is absorbing. The real world is being turned into spiral space, one moment at a time. Camilla realizes the truth. The spiral didn't want to escape. It wanted her to open the door, because she was the spiral's last gate, and she did. But not all is lost. Deep in the Dead House, Camilla finds something unexpected. A seed. Black. Pulsing. Silent. It is the 10th root, the one the spiral fears, the one that ends cycles. A piece of anti-pattern. But to use it, she must destroy herself completely. Not like with the thorn, but permanently. No return. No echoes. One thought, one action. Camilla Grey becomes the 10th root. She walks into the spiral gate, and when Camilla Grey unleashed the 10th root, the spiral imploded. Across the globe, people collapsed in the streets, screaming as the patterns inside their minds shattered like glass. The skies cleared. Mirrors stopped bleeding. The silver wound sealed. The spiral was gone. But something else was gone too. Camilla. All memory of her disappeared again. But unlike the first erasure, this time even her echo was dead. No drawings, no whispered name, no bloodlines. She had become true absence, and in that absence, a new kind of silence grew. 3 weeks after the spiral's collapse, something unnatural spread across the earth. Cities stilled. No wind, no movement in the trees. Time lagged, then corrected. People reported moments where they moved, but their shadows stayed still. They called it the stillness. It wasn't a curse. It wasn't an infection. It was the world grieving something it didn't remember losing. And in that grief, ancient stirred, not the spiral, but its counterweight. Before the spiral, there was something else. The first pattern. Unseen, incomplete, waiting. The spiral had been its mask, a way to touch the world. But now that Camilla had destroyed the spiral, she'd freed the first pattern to become what it truly was. It needed no cult, no rituals, just emptiness. And the world was full of it now. Empty temples, hollow minds, silent prayers. The first pattern had a name now, discovered by accident, in a dream. The Hollow One. And it had one mission, to finish what the spiral couldn't. In Alaska, a town long abandoned lit up again. Red Hollow, the original site. But this Red Hollow was older and bigger than it had ever been. Locals who ventured near found impossible architecture. Buildings made of books, bleeding stone, doors that only opened if you thought about pain. Inside, they saw faces, old faces. Maya, Harrow, Camilla, or something that wore her face. Only one message played on every screen, scratched into every wall. We never left. You only closed your eyes. Without the spiral to worship, cults fragmented. But one group rose from the void. They called themselves the Children of the Blank. They didn't chant. They didn't kill. They simply stood silently in crowds, staring at nothing, mouths wide open in awe. If questioned, they bled from the eyes and whispered, "The root is cut. We are waiting for the bloom." Wherever they went, silence followed. Sounds vanished. Memory degraded. They weren't worshiping the Hollow One. They were becoming it. Reality began to erode. Clocks spun without hands. People encountered moments of non-existence. Seconds where they weren't there. Gravity twitched. A woman named Elia found a hole in her backyard. When she dropped a camera inside, it recorded one frame. That frame showed Camilla, screaming, hands reaching out, as if trapped in the space between death and time. Behind her, a phrase carved in air. You cut the root, but the tree still remembers. Though forgotten, Camilla left behind aftershocks, individuals who briefly glimpse fragments of her memory. A boy in Mexico who paints her face every morning with no idea why. A deaf woman in Nairobi who dreams in spiral tongue. A prisoner in Russia who writes the same name on the wall each night, Camilla. These people are hunted by a new faction, the Archivists of the Hollow. They seek to erase memory completely, because memory, they believe, is the last spiral. One final horror begins. The dead don't rise. The living don't die. Instead, the boundary between both vanishes. People speak to loved ones who died years ago, and then forget the conversation moments later. Photographs change each day. The dead standing closer, smiling more. A ritual known as the unbecoming starts spreading online. A pattern you draw under your tongue. A word you say backwards. Those who do it say they see Camilla, but not as she was. They see her as she is now, neither woman nor savior, but something rootless, watching from the hollow sky. In Antarctica, a research team discovers a perfectly smooth door made of bone, embedded in the ice. No hinges, no seams, just an inscription. She buried herself to stop it. Now she must be dug up. The door leads nowhere, but those who stand near it long enough begin speaking in unison. Rootless, spiral, hollow. The cycle does not end. It only wears a new face. And one day, the door opens. From it steps Camilla, or what's left of her, eyes empty, mouth sewn shut, holding something in her hands, a new thorn. But this one pulses, as if it's alive. The team at Outpost Seraphim thought it was a woman. It walked like one. Bleeding footprints in snow, eyes crusted shut, skin pale as ash. But it didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't cast a shadow. They brought it inside, strapped it to a table, and recorded it saying one word over and over: remember. Then their cameras shut off, their clocks stopped, and by morning, all 12 researchers were gone, replaced by mannequins made of thorn roots and frozen memories. Only one note remained, scribbled in blood: she who was not has returned. Across the globe, more appearances. Not monsters, not shadows, just people standing still. You pass them on the street and forget their face immediately. You talk to them, and they answer with your voice. They call themselves the Woken Forgotten. Their purpose? To overwrite identity, to erase you from memory and replace you with them. And they're spreading through mirrors, phone calls, language.